Hello everybody, what is up, what is down, what is left, what is right? My name is Tuna, now welcome you all back to the Tuniverse. Today we'll be continuing the story of Deku and his symbiote Venom. Last time we left off, the League of Villains interrupted the UA Sports Festival and killed hundreds, and are now trying to recruit Stain. But before we get into it, I want to just say, sorry it's been a little minute since I've posted. I've just been super busy with work and life and whatnot, so yeah, but fear not, it is here now, so yeah, you can vote for what if we're going to do next in the description below. You'll be linked to a voting poll, and yeah, let's get into this. And remember, potential manga spoilers ahead. Stain enters the purple mist, followed by Carnage, and he finds himself in a bar surrounded by the League. Stain looks at them and says, "What do you want?" All for One steps out of the shadows and says, "Isn't it obvious? We want you to join us." As he says this, he retracts a tendril that wheels out a tube with some black and yellow sludge in it. Stain scowls at All for One before throwing a knife at the tube, causing it to smash open and stabbing All for One with his sword. But to his surprise, it goes through and does nothing, as All for One asks, "And why would you go do that for?" The other symbiotes manifest and All for One motions them to stand down. Stain goes on to say, "You are all monsters. I kill the fake heroes of society. You're all just genocidal maniacs with super bioweapons to your disposal. You lack any conviction." All for One laughs and says, "Yes, I suppose that is correct. I guess we haven't revealed any grandiose plan. But I can assure you, we do have plans." Stain scoffs, saying, "I will never join you." All for One, with a sigh, says, "Fine, Kurogiri, open up a portal to where you picked him up from." Kurogiri replies, "As you wish," and opens up a portal, and All for One forcibly ejects Stain's weapons from his body, stating, "Run along now." Stain picks up his weapons and leaves through the portal. Shigaraki asks, "Why not just kill him?" All for One, annoyed, replies, "If I must explain my reasons for every little thing I do, Shiggy, it's because his quirk is of no use to me, since if they're at the point I can ingest their blood, they'll already be dead. On top of that, he's indirectly an ally as he kills off heroes for us." All for One looks around and says, "I guess the symbiote chose you after all, Stain." After the students had a break from school to help with the recovery process from the UA Sports Festival, Aizawa enters the room and says, "Hello class, welcome back. I'm sorry about everything you all had to go through, especially you, Midoriya. However, now more than ever is no time to be falling behind on your hero training. You've all witnessed firsthand the threat we now collectively face, and so we've got to work even harder." That's when Iida speaks up, saying, "Aizawa, if I may, there is something I need to get off my chest." Aizawa looks at Iida and asks, "What is it?" That's when he looks to Midoriya and says, "As much as I hate to admit it, Bakugo is right. These things that have attacked us have a striking resemblance to Venom. After everything that happened, you owe us an explanation." Midoriya looks at the ground and mutters, I can't." Iida picks up Midoriya by the collar and Midoriya says, "Iida, back off," with Venom chiming in saying,
"Yeah, before we lose our temper."
Aizawa restrains Iida, but that's when Mineta steps up saying, "He's right, we could have been killed. Tell us, Midoriya." And Uraraka stands up saying, "Hey everyone, leave him alone." Then Bakugo says, "What's the matter, Deku? Need your girlfriend to fight your battles for you?" Todoroki yells, "Stop this! Fighting will get us nowhere!" But soon the entire class erupted into screaming matches with each other, and Bakugo says, "And what if you're unable to control Venom, huh? You're just gonna watch us die?" Midoriya yells, "That would never happen, I have full control, right Venom?" Venom yells,
"That's right, boo-boo, I got your back."
Bakugo just yells, "You're a danger to everyone here!" with Venom simply saying,
"Keep talking extra, we will send you through another building."
But Aizawa angrily yells, "Enough!" The class all falls silent with Aizawa saying, I have half the mind to expel every single one of you right now. But class look away ashamed, and Aizawa continues, however, I won't. You're only children who were put into a bad situation, so tensions are high right now. But the second we turn on each other is the second the villains win. Bakugo looks at Aizawa and says, you know, don't you? You know what's really happening here? The truth behind Venom, the other versions, everything? Aizawa looks to the board and says, that's not important right now. It's time for class. But class goes on and no one even makes a sound. The end of class arrives and Aizawa says, alright everyone, I'll hand out your hero internship offers. I want you all to look at every offer you got and decide which will be the best fit for you. He hands out everyone's offers, and on the way to the dorms, All Might stops Midoriya and says, young Midoriya, Venom, could I talk to you two for a moment? Venom replies,
You're not gonna make us eat your hair again, are you?
All Might laughs and says, of course not! So they follow All Might into his office and sit down. Midoriya looks at All Might and asks, what's up? All Might deflates and asks, did you get any offers? Midoriya looks down and says, no. People are starting to realize that Venom isn't a quirk and is connected with the sports festival incident. All Might states, yes, I suppose they know that they are out to ruin you, Midoriya. And having you hang around an agency could potentially lead to unnecessary danger. Venom angrily replies,
This is bullshit! Why are we being blamed for the actions of psychos? Just because we are one of them doesn't mean we are on their side.
All Might replies, I know, but don't worry. I got an offer right here for you. His name is Gran Torino. He taught me back in the day. But I gotta warn you two, he's super scary. Venom laughs and says,
He taught you? I think we can handle some old guy.
About a week passes, and Iida, Midoriya, and Uraraka head to the same train station, although Iida doesn't talk to them, and then he heads to his train. Midoriya says to Uraraka, well, I guess this is where we part ways for a week. Uraraka smiles and says, yeah, I guess so. Midoriya looks down and says, you know, maybe this is for the best. Tensions are high right now. Maybe this'll help things calm down. Uraraka smiles and says, yeah, I guess you're right. Well, Midoriya, good luck. She begins to head to her train, but Midoriya says, oh, well, wait. Uraraka looks back confused and asks, what's up? Midoriya looks down at the ground and says, I never got the chance to say this, but thanks for standing up for me last week, and being there for me when my mother was killed. It meant a lot to me, Ochako. He looks up with a smile and a face as red as tomato, and Uraraka's face goes red as well, and says, yeah, of course, what are friends for, Izuku? They wave goodbye and Midoriya starts to walk to his train, as Venom mockingly says,
Izuku and Ochako sitting in a tree, Kissing.
Midoriya goes bright red and yells at Venom to shut up. Midoriya and Venom arrive at Gran Torino's house, and Midoriya knocks on the door. But the door slowly creaked open as he poked his head inside and says, hello? Is anyone home? When they suddenly see an old man laying face down in what seems to be a pool of blood, and Midoriya screams, but Venom simply says,
Oh good, he's dead. Can we eat him?
Midoriya panics and says, no, we gotta call the cops. When suddenly the old man stands up and asks, what's all this ruckus about? And Venom says,
Ew, not another Nomu.
That's when the old man quickly jets forward at Izuku and kicks him before perching himself up in a corner. Gran Torino says, so, you're the boy with the symbiote. I watched you in the UA Sports Festival. You were impressive, but you were too slow to act and it costed the life of a loved one. Gran Torino quickly darts around, constantly kicking Midoriya, with Venom saying,
We know that. That's why we came to you, to get stronger.
Gran Torino, still kicking Midoriya, says, everyone watched you fail to save your own mother. Why would you expect anyone to call out for you if they were put in the same situation? Venom yells,
You're really starting to piss us off.
Gran Torino laughs and says, go on, show me what you can do without Venom. Midoriya takes a deep breath and closes his eyes, thinking to himself, I've always relied on Venom, but now it's time for me to use One for All. He suddenly jumps to his side, dodging Gran Torino's kicks over and over again. Gran Torino yells out, "Hey, I said no using Venom!" Venom laughs and says,
Ha! He's not using me. He's using One for All's danger sense.
Gran Torino smiles and says, "Well then, now we're talking. But you still gotta land a hit yet." Gran Torino continues to try and fail to kick Midoriya, when suddenly he yells, "Smokescreen!" as a mass amount of smoke fills up the room, and then Gran Torino is suddenly hit by an air propulsion. Gran Torino gets up and the smoke clears, and he sees Midoriya standing there with a broken finger, but Venom quickly heals it. Gran Torino says, "Well, I'm impressed. You seem to have more of a handle on One for All than I initially thought. However, you still have a long way to go." Midoriya bows before Gran Torino and says, "Please, teach us." Gran Torino looks at him and says, "Yes, that is why you're here after all. But for now, I've worked up an appetite. I'm gonna go buy us some grub." He begins to walk out, and before he leaves, he turns to Midoriya and says, "It's fine to admire All Might, but don't let it shackle you." And then he leaves. Venom asks,
What does he mean by that?
Midoriya simply shrugs, and they go to the alleyway to train. About an hour later, Gran Torino returns to see Midoriya firing off air from his finger, breaking it, and Venom healing it. Gran Torino approaches Midoriya and says, "No luck on controlling it?" Midoriya shakes his head, and Gran Torino says, "Don't let it get you down. You'll learn eventually, but for now, come on, time to eat." They enter the house, and Midoriya puts the fish cakes in the microwave and serves it to Gran Torino, who takes a bite before saying, "What's this crap?" And Venom replies,
It's what you bought, you old coot.
Gran Torino grumbles before saying, "You cooked these all wrong. They're warm on the outside, but frozen on the inside. It's no good." Gran Torino goes over and cooks them properly, and then they eat. Gran Torino says, "Perfectly cooked on both the inside and the outside. Like the heat was properly distributed throughout the entire fish cake." Gran Torino lets out a yawn before saying, "Alright, I'm head to bed for the night. Don't stay up too late, you two." Midoriya yells, "We won't." After they finish their food, they head back to the alleyway to train. Venom says to Midoriya,
Don't you think he was acting kind of strange?
Midoriya with confusion asks, "What do you mean?" With Venom replying,
He had this weird fixation with how it was cooked. When we cooked it, it was warm on the outside and cold on the inside. When he cooked it, it was perfect all over.
Midoriya began to ponder for a moment before saying, "Perfect all over! Venom, you're a genius!" Venom smugly says,
I know I am. But, for reference, what did I say?
Midoriya excitedly says, "Venom, I can use little snippets of your power without fully letting you take control over me, right?" Venom confusedly says,
Right.
and Midoriya continues, "But for us to be able to use you at full power, you got to fully take over, making all our powers perfect all over, like the fish cakes. So maybe I can do the same with One for All, cause up till now, I've only been focusing it in on one specific part." Venom laughs, saying,
How did we never think about this? Go ahead, try it.
So Midoriya does. He spreads the power evenly throughout his body, and fires off an air blast without breaking his finger. Venom and Midoriya are excited, and Midoriya starts jumping up the walls of the alleyway, and Venom states,
Now that you're able to use it as an enhancement, maybe we can now use it permanently while we're fully venomized, allowing us to have an even bigger boost.
Midoriya agrees, and Venom fully takes over, with Midoriya activating One for All. When he does this, something strange happens. Venom seems to change, with now white lightning-type stripes appearing on his body and face. Midoriya asks, "What happened?" With Venom stating,
I'm not too sure. It might have something to do with you being my host, and now being able to use One for All constantly like this.
The two don't question it further and decide to call it a night after a few more roof jumps. The next day rolls around and Gran Torino is training Midoriya again, But this time, Midoriya only uses the base enhancements of One for All, revealing his newfound mastery over the quirk to Gran Torino, calling it Full Cowling. After a while, Gran Torino says, "Alright, let's break for lunch. Afterwards, we're heading to the train station." Midoriya asks, "Where are we going?" Gran Torino, while walking to cook some more fish cakes, says, "We're going on patrol in Hosu City, so get your hero costume on." Hours pass and the train arrives in Hosu City. Midoriya is on his phone texting Uraraka when suddenly Midoriya begins to feel a tingling sensation and says, "Gran Torino, something's about to happen," when the train is suddenly rocked and they hear something on top of the train. When suddenly, these two massive brown claw-like hands tear into the roof, opening it, and the being says,
"Izuku!"
and they realize it's another symbiote. Venom states,
"Oh crap, it's Riot!"
Gran Torino yells at Midoriya, "Stay on the train!" And with a large burst of wind, jolts towards Riot and kicks him off, and the two go blitzing around the city until Riot grabs Gran Torino by the foot and slams him into the road, smashing through into a subway station. Gran Torino staggers up and Riot lands on the train tracks, saying,
"Well, old man, I'm impressed. You sure can take one hell of a beating. You got me excited for this. Don't disappoint me."
Gran Torino smirks and says, "Huh? You're gonna have to try harder than that to keep me down." Gran Torino begins to jet around, kicking Riot, but Riot laughs, saying,
"Is this all you've got?"
before turning his hand into a spiked mace ball and slams Gran Torino with it, sending him flying back. Riot then starts smashing the walls of the subway, trying to collapse it on top of Gran Torino. But he quickly jets back, kicking Riot again, but Riot grabs Gran Torino in one hand before turning his other hand into a large scythe-like weapon, when suddenly they hear a loud honking noise, causing Riot to scream in pain and dropping Gran Torino. Gran Torino quickly jumps up and Riot is hit dead on by a train. Gran Torino knows he can't leave, so he follows the train, and as he catches up to it, he can't seem to find Riot anywhere, when suddenly Riot slams Gran Torino down into the train and into the passenger section. They all scream and Gran Torino can hardly even stand, when Riot shoots out large spikes from his body, killing everyone in that section of the train. Gran Torino yells, "No!" before he jets forward into the next section. Riot laughs, saying,
"Well, old man, you want more people to die? Fine."
Before running towards Gran Torino. But with the last bit of strength Gran Torino can muster, he forcibly detaches the other section of the train from his current one, and the train sped off. Before he is about to pass out, he says, "I am sorry. I did what I could. And after I had the audacity to lecture the boy about the world, watching him fail, I am a disgrace." When suddenly he can hear stomping and he sees Riot catching up to the train, saying,
"You're a dead man."
as he elongates his arm and grabs Gran Torino. But he can't fight back, he is too badly weakened, and Riot says,
"Do you hear that?"
Off in the distance, Gran Torino can hear the sound of an oncoming train, and Riot says,
"You were a worthy adversary. Too bad we'll never get the chance to rematch."
Riot then full force throws Gran Torino down the train tracks, and he slams into an oncoming train, completely forcing the train to stop, and all that can be seen of Gran Torino is a bloodied arm sticking out from the indentation on the now derailed train. Riot is standing there, and he hears a voice behind him say, "Riot, where is that idiot protege of mine?" Riot quickly turns to see All For One, and he slinks back into Muscular. Muscular says, "Hey, old man, I don't know where Shigaraki is. He said he'll be around Hosu, and he wanted me to keep Izuku busy. But as you can see, I got a little bit sidetracked." All For One puts his hand on Muscular's shoulder and says, "Alright, head back to the warehouse, and tell the others there that they are no longer to listen to any orders unless given by me." Muscular says, "Understood," before suddenly spewing up some black sludge, before appearing back in the warehouse and passing on All For One's message. Meanwhile, in an alleyway in Hosu, Iida is wandering around when he hears a scream. He runs to the scream, and there he sees a pro-hero native being stabbed by Stain. Iida angrily yells, "Stain, I've been looking for you!" Stain looks at the boy before looking back at Native, saying, "I'm not done with you." And then walking over to Iida, "Who the hell are you? Wait, you're Ingenium's brother, aren't you? I remember watching you on TV." Iida yells, saying, "That's right, Ingenium is my brother that you wrongly stole from his career." Stain looks at Iida and says, "Wrongly? He was a fake hero, kid. You're lucky I didn't kill him. And luckier still, I don't kill kids, unlike some genocidal maniacs I had the displeasure of meeting. Run along." Suddenly Iida yells, "For my brother, I will take you down right here, right now," before charging at Stain with a kick. Stain jumps out of the way and stabs Iida in the shoulder before licking his sword. Iida suddenly can't move, and Stain walks up to him and says, "You're no better than those fake heroes. This entire time you've only cared about revenge for your brother. You didn't even notice the person in danger." Iida looks over to see Native and says, "Well, I... Stain scoffs, saying, "What I..." Iida then yells, "Stain, behind you!" Stain laughs, saying, "I'm not gonna fall for..." But before he can finish, he feels a large hand penetrate his back and a red claw-like hand coming through his chest. Stain begins to cough up blood, and Carnage says,
"You should have taken our offer, Stain. Now you're going to die."
Carnage quickly flings Stain's body against the wall, leaving a bloody mess on the wall. Carnage looks over to see Native and Iida, but then he looks at Native and says,
"You won't be needed,"
and stabs Native with a spear-like tendril, and then walks over to Iida and says,
"I know you. You're Tenya Iida, Izuku Midoriya's classmate. Truth be told, usually I just kill my victims. However, it might make Izuku even more depressed knowing that his classmate will never be able to achieve his dream because of him."
Iida scarcely says, "What do you mean?" Carnage laughs, saying,
"Let's just say that after I'm done with you, you'll need a leg up."
Carnage then wraps tendrils around Iida's body and lifts him up into the air, and Iida says, "Please, don't hurt me. I'll do anything. I hate the guy. I'll rat him out. Just don't hurt me." Carnage laughs, saying,
"I don't need a mole when I've already infiltrated the class."
Iida, with tears in his eyes, says, You monster!" But Carnage just gives a devilish smile before wrapping 2 more tendrils around Iida's legs and slowly and painfully tearing them off, having him feel every little muscle and joint disconnect from one another. Iida cries out in pain, "Someone! Anyone! Help!" Earlier, when Riot attacked the train, Gran Torino yells, "Stay on the train!" before he jolts towards Riot and the two fly off. Midoriya says, "Venom, we gotta help him." Venom simply replies,
"Right."
Midoriya jumps on top of the train through the hole in the roof. They look around, but they can't seem to see them anywhere, so Midoriya yells, "Venom!" And Venom replies,
"On it."
Midoriya jumps off the train and Venom fully takes control and lands in front of a dude, causing him to fall over, and Venom says,
"Apologies, law-abiding citizen."
before darting off, and the dude gets up and says, "Is that the kid from the sports festival?" Midoriya and Venom search for a good 5 minutes before they suddenly hear a familiar voice screaming out in pain. "Someone! Anyone! Help!" Midoriya yells, "Venom! Iida!" Venom replies,
"Do we have to? Four Eyes hates us."
Midoriya angrily yells, "Venom!" And Venom scoffs, saying,
"Fine, yeesh. No need to yell."
before running into the alleyway to see a legless Iida wrapped up in Carnage's tendrils. Venom yells,
"You!"
Carnage looks at Venom, drops Iida and says,
"Oh, hello, Daddy."
Venom looks at Carnage and says,
"Ew, what the fuck, dude? That's kinda sus. Jesus Christ. Never say that again."
Carnage flusteredly says,
"What? No, wait, that's not what I meant. You're my father, so I meant like, I'm going to kill you."
Carnage dashes towards Venom and tries to slash at Venom, But Venom quickly jumps up in the air and is then penetrated by Carnage's 8 long spear-like tendrils, and then Carnage smashes him into the ground. Midoriya says, "Damn it! We need to be able to heal Iida, but I won't be able to hold off Carnage long enough without you, Venom. What do we do?" Venom says,
"We've just gotta subdue Carnage, even just for a moment."
Carnage walks over to Venom and starts slashing at the two, laughing the entire time, when suddenly Carnage jumps out of the way of 2 scythe-like weapons, and they see a black and yellow symbiote standing there, and Venom yells,
"Sleeper! Buddy! Good to see you!"
Sleeper looks at Venom and says,
"We'll have to celebrate our reunion later. For now, get Iida and Native out of here. I'll hold off Carnage."
Venom replies,
"Right, just make sure to stay safe."
and he grabs Iida and Native and jumps away. Carnage lets off a laugh and says,
Sleeper, was it? Ha! You don't stand a chance against us.
Sleeper with a sigh replies,
"You will lose here. I don't know what you are, but what I do know is whatever you are, you're not natural. An abomination to our species. I'll put you down here now."
Carnage turns his arms into scythes and extrudes 8 spear-like tendrils, and runs at Sleeper, but then Sleeper lets out fumes and Carnage begins to feel tired, as Sleeper turns his own hands into scythes and the two clash. Sleeper is able to overpower Carnage, cutting off his arm, and Carnage exclaims,
You bastard! I'll kill you for that!
before trying to slice Sleeper with his other arm, but Sleeper throws sludge at the hand and it melts off, before saying,
"You know what your problem is, Shigaraki? Because you have a powerful symbiote and a powerful quirk, you think you're invincible. But anyone with half a tactical thought process can easily beat you."
Carnage angrily yells,
Not fair, not fair, not fair! Die, you bastard!
as all 8 tendrils make a mad dash towards Sleeper, but Sleeper bites the tendrils and eats them. Carnage suddenly falls to the ground and says,
What the hell? Why? Why can't we move?
Sleeper gets down to Carnage's level and says,
If you had half a brain cell, you know that the person I'm using right now is staying. Now time to die.
He goes to rip off the Carnage symbiote when he is suddenly hit with a massive blast of dense air, getting detached from Stain and quickly taking a humanoid form. He looks back to see All For One and decides to retreat. All For One watches Sleeper leave and says, so this symbiote can take a human form without a host. Interesting. Carnage slinks back into Shigaraki and says, Thank you, All For One. All For One looks at Shigaraki angrily and yells, Get back to base now! As a portal opens up and the two walk back in. All For One looks at Shigaraki and says, I put up with a lot from you, but you jeopardized everything! Shigaraki says, But All For One... All For One interrupts Shigaraki and says, No! You do not get to call me by my true name. From now on, you will refer to me as Master. Got it? Shigaraki looks at All For One and says, Yes, Master. And All For One continues, Because of you, the heroes know the threat they face. Because your dumbass decided to attack the sports festival, the most televised event in all of Japan. They knew we had the symbiotes, but they did not grasp the true threat they held. That was till you showed them. Shigaraki scarcely says, But Master, there is nothing they can do to... But All For One interrupts again. Oh, nothing they can do? You forget, Shigaraki, that unlike me, none of you are immune to fire or sound. Endeavor could wipe all of you out easily. All For One sighs and rubs his head, saying, Shigaraki, you have time and time again disappointed me. All you ever do is fail. Therefore, I deem you unworthy of being my protege, and unworthy of the title of the head of the League of Villains. Shigaraki protests, But Master! All For One yells, No buts! The only reason I'm letting you live right now is because your symbiote and quirk have amazing potential. He looks at the others. Effective immediately, Muscular is now the head of the League. Now go and rest, all of you, and await further orders. Meanwhile, on a rooftop, Venom enters Iida but doesn't reveal anything to Iida, and then goes back to Midoriya and says,
Well, I healed up his legs so that way they won't bleed anymore. However, I cannot regenerate lost limbs. Furthermore, he's passed out from blood loss.
Midoriya looks at Iida and Native and says, because of me, you two had to suffer. I'm so sorry. Midoriya begins to cry, but Venom tries to console Midoriya by saying,
Izuku, now is not the time to get down on ourselves. Clearly, we have a long way to go. Keep your chin up, kid. No one is expecting us to be perfect.
Midoriya wipes his tears away and says, you're right, let's get these two to the hospital. They arrive in the hospital and a bunch of doctors rush Iida off to her bed and a few others announce that Native didn't pull through. And Midoriya thinks, yet another person we were too slow to save. He then says, Venom, we have to find Gran Torino. They're about to leave when a nurse stops them and says, I'm sorry, did you say Gran Torino? Midoriya nods and the nurse remorsefully says, please, follow me. Midoriya follows the nurse through the seemingly endless labyrinth of corridors before they see a room labelled morgue. Midoriya's eyes widen and says, no, this can't be right. This has to be some sort of mistake, right? The nurse doesn't respond and just opens the door, and on the table, Midoriya sees the bloodied, smushed body of Gran Torino. Midoriya can't believe what he's seeing. First Native, then Iida, now you too? Venom speaks, saying,
Izuku, we will not let these monsters get away with all that they have done on this night. We will stop them at all costs.
Midoriya grabs Gran Torino's lifeless hand and says, even though we've only known each other for a couple of days, you taught me so much. I promise, I won't let your training go to waste. I'll grow stronger and stronger, so strong that even without Venom, all the other symbiotes will fear me. Midoriya leaves the morgue and calls All Might to tell him the news. This hits All Might hard and he says, he may have been hard on me, but he was an amazing teacher. Better than even me. I just hope he can rest in peace. After they are done on the phone, All Might informs Nezu of what had transpired, and they set up Midoriya with a room in a hotel for the night. The next day, Midoriya gets a text from Uraraka saying that the class was informed about what had happened, and the whole class was coming to visit Iida. Hours pass and Class 1A arrives at the hospital, and all enter Iida's room. Iida looks at everyone and says, what are you all doing here? Momo speaks up saying, we all wanted to come check up on you. What happened? The class all falls silent, awaiting an answer, and Iida looks to Midoriya, and then to its class and says, Carnage ambushed me in an alleyway. He tore off my legs, wanting me to suffer. Luckily, Midoriya showed up and saved me. The class mumbled to themselves before Denki speaks up again. Well, man, we're glad you're alive at least. That's for sure. Todoroki speaks up saying, agreed. I just feel bad. I was in the area, but I had no idea what was going on. Iida begins to cry and the class all stay to support Iida. After a while, Iida says, there's one more thing. Carnage said he's already infiltrated the class, so someone here is a mole. The class all falls silent and Aoyama steps forward. It's me. I'm the mole. The class are all in shock and Bakugo and Kirishima quickly subdue him and Midoriya says, Aoyama, why? Why would you betray us? He looks down and explains, I was once quirkless. My parents wanting me to have a normal life made a deal with a man called All for One. He had the power to give and take quirks. Iida looks at Aoyama and says, why are you telling us? Aoyama replies, because they have taken so many lives. I swear, I didn't know they'd be capable of this. And now, he's going to kill me and my family. I'm so sorry. Aoyama cries, and Aizawa wraps up Aoyama in his scarf and says, I'm sorry I have to treat you like this. However, it's protocol. He takes Aoyama to the police that were waiting to get a statement from Iida, and they take him away. Aizawa re-enters the room and says, alright, Class 1A, Iida needs to rest. It's time we all headed back to the station. The class all say goodbye to Iida and begin to walk out, but Midoriya looks at Aizawa and says, May I have just another minute with Iida? Aizawa looks at Midoriya and says, Fine, we'll be waiting in the lobby, but make it quick. The class all leave, and Midoriya takes a seat next to Iida and says, You didn't tell them. Iida looks at Midoriya and says, It's as Aizawa said. The second we turn on each other is the second the villains win, and I don't want to be responsible for that. Venom rears his goopy head and looks at Iida.
Four Eyes. No. Tenya. We know this won't change what has happened, but after all you've been through, you deserve to at least know why this is all happening.
Venom goes on to explain everything, about him being an alien, his race, how he met Midoriya, everything, and then says,
It hasn't even been a year, but there's been so much bloodshed because of our species. So, it's been decided that after all the threats have been dealt with, after all the other symbiotes are dead, I will detach from Izuku and go somewhere to die.
Iida looks at Venom and says, You do that, but I won't forgive you. Midoriya asks Venom, Are you serious? Venom simply responds,
Yes.
Midoriya leaves Iida's room and returns to his classmates. Later that night, in the early hours of the morning, Midoriya heads up to the roof of the dorms, where he just sits there, when the door opens and he sees Uraraka, and says, Oh, Chako, what are you doing up this late? She goes and sits down with Midoriya and says, After Iida and Aoyama, I couldn't sleep. It seems kinda hard. But you've experienced a lot more than what we did. The toll in your mental state must be so much harder to bear than ours. Midoriya just nods, and Uraraka looks at him and says, It's fine. It's just you and me here. You don't have to hold back your tears anymore. Just let it out. Midoriya's eyes begin to tear up as his eyes become akin to waterfalls. He couldn't bring himself to do anything more than cry. Uraraka hugs him and says, It's alright to cry, and I'll be a shoulder for you forever and always. The next day rolls around, and the class see the UA staff all lined up, and Venom says,
Look at all of you, lined up like you're gonna be the next big J-pop band.
Nezu appears from Aizawa's scarf and says, As sharp-tongued as always, I see, Venom. So, it has come to our attention that lately, due to unfortunate circumstances, your class's bond has been strained. So, as the end of your semester exam, you'll be paired up into teams of 2 to fight against the UA staff. You win by either handcuffing them or escaping. Nezu announces the teams, and everyone's in the same as in canon, with the exception that Uraraka is teamed up with Ojiro against 13, so everything goes the same as in canon. Bakugo and Midoriya are at the starting area, and Bakugo looks at Midoriya and says, Don't get in my way, you stupid Deku. Venom scoffs, saying,
We were gonna say the same to you, Extra.
Midoriya pipes up saying, Come on guys, we gotta work as a... Before he could finish, the horn goes off and Bakugo jets forward, and Midoriya says, Team, great. He fully venomizes and with full cowling easily catches up to Bakugo, and Venom says,
Hey, dipshit, we should work together.
Bakugo scoffs, saying, We don't need to, when All Might suddenly appears in the middle of the two and says, Bickering while fighting an opponent stronger than the two of you? How bold! And he smashes Midoriya over the head and sends him flying back, and then slams his fist into Bakugo. Bakugo, now pinned on the ground, screams, Get off of me! And fires off multiple explosions in All Might's face. But All Might shrugs it off and says, How can you expect people to rely on you when you push everyone away? He slams Bakugo into the ground again, and Bakugo says, I don't need anyone. I can look after myself. All Might looks at Bakugo, raises an eyebrow, and says, Clearly, when suddenly a long black tendril wraps around All Might and starts spinning around with Venom saying,
Tell me if you've heard this one before. Carolina?
He lets go, sending All Might flying, and continuing,
Smash!
He quickly grabs Bakugo, and they disappear into the alleyways of the fake city. Bakugo yells, I didn't need your help! Venom slinks back into Midoriya, and he asks, Why do you hate us so much? What did we ever do to you? Bakugo scoffs and says, Because all my life I was taught the strong were born to succeed, and the weak were born to fail. So when a weak, sniveling worm like you suddenly is able to potentially be on par with All Might, it shattered everything I know. So tell me, why the hell are you suddenly so goddamn strong, Izuku? Bakugo quickly covers his mouth, and Midoriya looks at Bakugo and says, You called me Izuku? Bakugo yells, Shut up! It was a slip of the tongue, don't go looking into it. Venom chimes in and says,
We can't tell you.
Bakugo scoffs and says, Of course not. When Venom replies,
No, we mean we literally can't. We're on the clock, so allow us to show you.
Bakugo looks at them and says, Show me? Venom latches onto Bakugo and he freaks out saying, What the fuck? And Venom reveals all of Midoriya's memories to Bakugo before going back into Midoriya. Bakugo looks at Midoriya and says, All this time, all the pain you suffered. I know I was a bully, but I guess it never occurred to me that it must have been putting you through so much pain, and Bakugo gets on his hands and knees and says, Izuku, I am so sorry. Midoriya helps Bakugo to his feet and says, Kachan, that's all in the past now. I forgive you. So let's start over again, as friends. Midoriya smiles and Bakugo, who replies, Right, but now we've got to come up with some way to beat All Might. Midoriya smokes and says, We have a plan. All Might is running around saying, Where are you, boys? As he throws punches destroying buildings, and he hears from behind him, I don't need you, Deku! I can do this myself! Followed by an explosion, and All Might catches Bakugo midair. Still can't seem to get along? How disappointing! When he suddenly hears large footsteps behind him, and Bakugo yells, Now, Izuku! And Venom elongates his arm, trying to punch All Might from a distance. But All Might catches it, exclaiming, Now we're talking, you're starting to work together. Though one at a time is a bad idea. Bakugo and Venom laugh, and Bakugo says, Who the hell said anything? And Venom continues,
About attacking one at a time.
All Might is confused as they both yell,
AP machine gun!
All Might says, Wait, what? As both Venom and Bakugo let off a massive explosion from both sides, sending All Might flying. Bakugo asks, How are you doing, Slimy? Venom replies,
Fine. Thanks to your quirk, I built up a little more tolerance to heat.
The two begin to run, and All Might thinks, Wait, Venom can use explosion? Does that mean Bakugo knows? He then uses air pressure to send himself flying towards the two, and he crashes into them and says, You didn't think it would be that easy, did you? The boys are now on the floor, and Venom says,
Bakugo, remember that ultimate move you used in the sports festival?
Bakugo replies, Yeah, what about it? Venom gives Bakugo a big smile and says,
How much damage do you think two of them would do?
Bakugo smiles back, and they get back up, and All Might laughs and says, So, you boys want more? Okay. Venom and Bakugo lock arms, with Venom saying,
One for all, full cowling.
The boys then jump up into the air, and All Might jumps up as well and says, You won't get away that easy. But then they begin to spin, and All Might realizes what they are doing and says, Crap! But before he could get out of the way, they ram into All Might, spinning so fast they might as well have been a drill. And he hears both Venom and Bakugo say,
Howitzer nuclear impact!
As an explosion goes off and destroys all nearby buildings, and All Might slams into the ground. Venom and Bakugo land safely, although a little beaten up, as the recoil on that attack was immense, with Venom being severely weakened by the flames, and retracts back into Midoriya, stating,
I need a breather. Take the wheel for a little while.
Midoriya and Bakugo quickly put the cuffs on All Might, and it is announced that Bakugo and Midoriya have passed. They get back to the rest of their class, and everyone is in awe, saying how awesome they were. And with that, the bell rings, and the class is over. Midoriya, Uraraka, and Bakugo are walking together to the lunchroom, when All Might rounds the corner and says, Young Midoriya, can I talk to you in my office for a moment? Midoriya nods and follows All Might. When they get into his office, he goes into his skinny form and asks, Does Bakugo know? Midoriya looks at All Might and says, yeah, he does. All Might sighs and asks,
Who else knows?
Midoriya says, just Iida, Bakugo, and Uraraka. All Might sighs with relief and says,
Okay, not as bad as I thought. But from now on, try to keep a closer lid on that little secret of yours. Speaking of, Venom is awfully quiet.
Midoriya chuckles and says, yeah, that last fight took a lot out of him. All Might smiles and says,
well, he has earned a little rest. You two are going to make fine heroes one day. Far better than even I ever was. However, on to the reason I called you in here. I've been invited to this place called Island. I take it you know what that is?
Midoriya excitedly says, yeah, it's where the heroes from across the world go. All Might looks up and says,
of course you'd be super excited. Well, as I said, I've been invited as a guest speaker, and I can bring a +1. So I was wondering if you would want to come along.
He looks back at Midoriya to see him nearly crying and says, oh my god, All Might, I can't believe you'd invite me. There are so many other options, people you could invite. I am honored. Honestly, you have no idea how much this means to... But All Might quickly silences Midoriya with a smack over the head, and Midoriya says, ow, sorry. So when are we leaving? Next week? Month? All Might scratches his cheek and says,
more like tomorrow.
Midoriya looks at All Might and says, tomorrow! Thank you all so much for watching this episode. This episode was much longer than I had anticipated, but you know what? It's cool. We can have longer videos sometimes. Yeah. You know, if you liked, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Remember to go into the description and vote for which what if you want done next. And yeah, so I'll see you all next time. Peace.